An average of 30 people die from climbing every single year. Last year, we lost a 17-year-old and two 22-year-olds. This begs the question, is climbing dangerous? There's two different types of climbing. There's climbing with rope, and then there's bouldering. There's also something called free soloing, which is extremely dangerous, and I do not recommend it. It's when you climb a mountain without ropes. You've probably seen the documentary Free Solo. Yes, that is life-threatening. In this video, we're going to go through common injuries with climbing and bouldering, as well as ways to prevent those injuries and make climbing as safe and fun as possible. Hi, I'm Sarah from SendEdition.com, the website that brings you tips, tricks, and occasional gear review for bouldering and climbing. Let's go ahead and get into the video, starting off with common injuries. In a study that surveyed climbers, they found that the most common injury was actually to the hands and the tendons, not surprisingly if you've been climbing for too long. However, in a separate study that looked at rock climbing injuries treated in the emergency rooms in the United States, they actually found that fractures, sprains, and strains accounted for the largest portion of injuries. So this may be conflicting information because one study is saying something completely different than the other study. And what we think is, well, climbers are less likely to go to an emergency room with a pulled tendon in comparison to a fracture or sprain. Now let's break these down into what the specific injuries are, how they occur, and how you can prevent or not have the same thing happen to you. First off is a pulled tendon, which has been noted by climbers as the most common injury, and this is mostly related to crimp climbing. If you're not familiar with crimp climbing, it's when the holds are so small you can only reach the tips of your fingertips on the hold, and this causes a huge strain in your hand tendons if you do this too often. And if you start feeling pain in your hands and you keep climbing, you're at a higher risk of pulling tendons in your hands. Unfortunately, this isn't like your muscles where you just tear them down and they build up stronger. Tearing them down actually just makes them worse. It takes time to build your pulley tendons, so make sure that you are not pushing yourself. If you feel pain in your hand, stop climbing. It's not worth the potential injury that could take 6 months to even a year to heal from. Now, the next most common is sprained ankles, and we're going to group this with fractures because they're usually caused by the same thing, either a ground fall, which is most common in bouldering because there are no ropes. Every fall is a ground fall. You're going to hit the ground. If you hit or land on your ankles or your feet wrong, it's likely that you are going to sprain or, even worse, fracture your bones. Now, in rope climbing, there's a much smaller chance of this happening because you're not supposed to be taking ground falls if you are using your safety equipment correctly. But this does require you to have a really good belayer who's paying attention and making sure they're giving you the proper amount of slack for when you're sports climbing. Now, we've seen so many falls online on memes that show a climber swinging out, whipping out really hard, and that usually ends up with them crashing against the side of the cliff. And yes, crashing your body against the side of the cliff is likely to cause you injuries. And so when you are making big moves or you are belaying, make sure that you're paying attention so you can minimize any chance that your fellow climber gets hurt when they fall. Next one is sprained wrists, which sprained wrists is also most common in bouldering because when you fall, if you accidentally catch yourself with your hands, that is a great way to sprain your wrist, and it's really unfortunate because you need those wrists to climb. It's not something you can just limp away with and keep climbing. To prevent sprained wrists from falls, specifically in bouldering ground falls, make sure that you're not using your hands to catch yourself. Instead, use your feet, drop your knees down, keep everything bent, and roll backwards if it's a really big fall. Keep your head tucked though so you don't hurt your head.
Whenever possible, you still want to fall on your feet, scrunch your body up, and try to roll into the fall. So even if you fall sideways, still not going to put my arm out, still going to try to tuck and kind of roll sideways.
The next one is probably one of the most commonly known, and it's called climber's elbow, also known as tennis elbow. And it's caused by straining a tendon near your elbow. This is an overuse thing as well. Usually tennis players will work specific muscles in their elbow to prevent tennis elbow. And so there are some things you can do with exercising to prevent that strain. But if you are feeling pain in your elbow, stop climbing. It's not worth a climber's elbow. That really sucks. Next is a climber's knee, which is unfortunate that it's so common, because a climber's knee is when you are not properly pivoting your feet on the footholds when you are making like a drop knee move, for example. And if you want to know more about pivoting, check out my last video that I did last week. I spent an entire climbing session pivoting my feet for additional reach, and that pivot is what you need in a drop knee to prevent injuries. And one of the most common causes of these injuries is you're climbing at a skill level that is just way too high for you. I know you are taught that you should stretch yourself and try those harder climbs, and yes, you should stretch yourself, and yes, you should try those harder climbs, but you need to make sure, you need to see, okay, am I just hurting myself? Am I not to the level where I can hold on to these crimps for the entire time? And am I falling every single move? Because if you are, you're going to need additional help, like spotters or different types of way of belaying you for falling every single move. And if you are falling every single move, that climb is just outside of your skill level. And what you can do is build up to that climb. So do a climb that's a little bit easier, that uses the similar movements or similar climbing holds, so that you can build up to that move a little bit easier while minimizing the risk of injury. If you're feeling pain in your fingers, I know you are one move away from making that send. I'm sorry, this sucks, but it's better that you stop climbing, that your hands recover, that your tendons recover, instead of making that last move or trying that climb one more time and risking 6 months to a year recovery because of your tendon pulls. I wish I didn't have to say this one, but in bouldering, especially when you're at the gym, even rope climbing, do not walk under another climber. Pay attention to your surroundings. If they fall, they will not only injure you, but you will end up being the cause of injuries for them because you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. So be sure that you're paying attention. If you're in a climbing gym especially, if someone is bouldering right there, if someone is climbing right there, do not walk beneath them. And this is also a pet peeve of mine, when a belayer is slightly off the wall so that they can see the climber, and you've got just enough space for someone to walk between the belayer and the wall, and people walk through that aisle. What can happen, and unfortunately does happen more than you can believe, is just at the moment they are walking through, the climber falls, and because the belayer is further away from the wall than they should be, it pushes them towards the wall, then colliding them with the person who is walking by, and hopefully they are a good enough belayer that they catch the rope, or that their device catches their rope when they plummet into someone else, because if their belay device doesn't have that backup system, then that climber is also going to get injured. So 2 things here: don't walk under a climber, and don't walk between the belayer and the wall. That's a great way to prevent injuries. Now, in bouldering specifically, there are a couple of things that are really common for new boulderers to do that actually increase their risk of injury. And I even see people who are very experienced at bouldering do these things as well. So I'm just going to go through a couple, and let's start with don't jump down from the climb. Now, in bouldering, you don't have ropes to be lowered down, so climb down. If you jump, you're going to increase your risk of injury to your ankles, especially rolling them. And we want to make sure that to prevent injuries as much as possible, we want to minimize the amount of times that you're hitting the ground. So climb down, step off the wall instead of jump off the wall. Next is to use proper techniques when you're contorting your body into different movements. For example, the back step. Make sure that you're pivoting your foot so that you don't hurt your knee. Make sure that you're not moving your limbs in ways that they're not supposed to be moved. So make sure you're using proper techniques so you don't make those injuries. So if you feel like your fall zone may be getting a little out of hand with where your mats are, get a spotter, have them help you out. Of course, a better option would be to have bigger mats or thicker mats or longer mats so that you can get that benefit without a spotter, because spotters can actually cause injury if they aren't properly spotting you. For example, if they're in the wrong location, you swing out and you squish them, that's going to cause a lot more pain than it would be if they weren't there in the first place, for the both of you, for the climber and for the spotter. The last one is actually from climbing.com, and they had a really good suggestion that I wanted to share with you, and that's to remove jewelry, belts, anything that could get caught. Unfortunately, I've seen women get their hair caught in belay devices. Just last week, someone from my hometown, I was rappelling off of a really common climb, and their hair got stuck in one of the devices. So if you have long hair, wear a ponytail. And if you have earrings, I know you want to keep your earrings in for the video, for the photos, because it looks cute. Take them out. Just another thing that you can do prevent injuries. I mean, what would be worse than getting your earrings pulled out of your ears while climbing? Okay, I can list quite a number, but this is just to point out that there are small, simple things you can do to make your climbing even safer. So just to wrap things up here, climbing can be dangerous, and there are a lot of common injuries with climbing, but there are a lot of things you can do to prevent those injuries. And coming from someone who's actually a part of a really serious climbing accident, I've been lucky enough that I haven't seen anyone die, but I have seen a really nasty fall where they were in ICU for almost a week and had to relearn how to walk, and after 5 years just barely getting back into climbing. So I'm no stranger to how scary climbing can be, and yes, it's dangerous. Despite the dangers of climbing, I still find it to be one of the most rewarding activities that I get to do on a regular basis. I actually wrote an entire article about this on my blog, so go ahead and Google search 22 health benefits of rock climbing and of rock climbing Send Edition, and you'll see my article right there at the top. In addition to physical benefits such as the exercise and the coordination building, it also is known for many mental and emotional benefits as well. For example, in one study about the psychophysical benefits of climbing, they tested for anxiety before and after 3 months of climbing training, and actually found that climbing decreases anxiety. That's just one of the 22 benefits that I sourced from scientific studies in my article, so go ahead and check that out on sendedition.com. And you can search benefits of climbing. I'll also link the article in this description if you're interested. If you would also like a video about the benefits of climbing, I've been toying with the idea of making that video. So please comment below or like this video so I know that's something you're interested in. Thanks so much for watching this video, and enjoy your send.